Hey guys, we're going to be looking at some examples with problems dealing with powers of I. So this is another thing that's going to be super important to know during this unit. I to the first power equals just I. I squared equals -1. I cubed equals -I. And lastly, I to the fourth equals 1. Okay? So once again, these four things right here are super important to know with this unit. So let's look at example number 1. We have 4i times 7i. So 4 times 7 gives you 28. And then we have I times I, which gives you I squared. But then we're not going to keep it as this because we know that I squared is the same as -1. So we're going to rewrite it as 28 under the parentheses of -1. And then of course simplify. 28 times -1 is -28. And there's your answer. Okay? Let's look at example number 2. We have -4 times 2, which is -8. Then we have -8 times -9, which is going to give you positive 72. And then we have I times I times I, so that's just going to be I cubed. So of course 72 is going to stay the same, but we're going to rewrite I cubed as -I because according to our chart we know that I cubed is -I. Okay, and then we simplify. 72 times -I is going to become -72I, and there's your final answer. Let's look at number 3. So first we have to get rid of this exponent, so that means we need to bring the exponents of everything in there. So that's going to become 2 cubed, which is 2 times 2 times 2, which will give us 8. And then of course we have I times cubed, so that becomes I cubed. And it's times 5i. So now we can break it down. We can say 8 times 5, which is 40. And then we have I cubed times I, to the 1, which of course becomes I to the 4th. And we know from over here, I to the 4th becomes 1. So that's just 40 times 1, which of course is just 40. Okay, let's look at one last example. We have the square root of -18. So first we're going to have to rewrite that because we know that the square root of -18 is going to become the square root of 18 times a -1 times, and same thing right here. We can't keep that square root of -10. We're going to have to rewrite that as 10 times a -1. Okay, the square root of 18 can be broken down into 9 times 2. Of course, times a -1 because we cannot forget about that. Then we can rewrite square root of 10 times a -1 as just, well, it's just going to say that because we cannot break down 10. Okay, we can bring out a 9 because the square root of 9 is 3. We can bring out the -1, which is I. It's going to have to stay the square root of 2. Then we have the square root of 10 times -1, so it's going to be times, we're going to have an I up front, and then we're just going to have the square root of 10. Okay, sorry guys, this one we're kind of running out of room, so we're going to come to right here. All right, so now we multiply these front things. So we have 3i times I, which will give you 3i squared, and then we have the square root of 10 times 2, which is 20. And then this is almost our final answer. The only thing is now we can break down the square root of 20. We can break that down into 4 times 5, right? So out front we have 3i squared, sorry. We bring out the square root of 4, which is 2. So times 2, still onto the square root of 5, equals 3 times 2 is 6i squared, square root of 5. Then the only last thing is we're going to rewrite I squared because we know that that's equal to -1. So we're going to say 6 times a -1 square root of 5. 6 times a -1 is -6 square root of 5. So sorry, I know this one got a little confusing, but this one just combines what we went over in that last lesson, which is, of course, figuring out how to get rid of negative square roots and then actually throwing it in with the powers of I. But this right here, you shouldn't have any harder problems on your homework than just something like this, okay?